Welcome to another story. If you love stories that resonate with the heart, you've come to the right place. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on our journey. Title: Letters from the Ward. Chapter 1, Found Between the Lines. Dr. Andrew Miller was nearing the end of another long, emotionally draining night shift. At just 28, he had already grown accustomed to the rhythm of the palliative care wing, the quiet murmurs, the beeping machines, the solemn goodbyes. It wasn't a place of miracles or recoveries. It was a place of comfort and closure. But that night, as the hallway lights dimmed and the staff began the slow transition to the morning shift, something unusual caught his eye. An elderly patient named Harold Whitman had passed away only hours before. Harold had been a quiet man, offering little in the way of conversation during his final days. He had no visitors, no family on file. As Andrew cleaned out Harold's bedside table to prepare the room for its next occupant, he noticed a bundle tucked beneath a pile of old magazines, a stack of letters, worn at the edges, tied together with a faded red ribbon. The top envelope was yellowed with age, the ink slightly smudged but still legible. It was addressed, in elegant cursive, to someone named Margaret. Andrew flipped through the stack. Every letter bore the same name. There were no dates on the outside, but the paper inside spoke of another time, phrases like the summer of '64, references to a war, to a seaside cottage, to shared books and lost promises. Despite the hospital's unwritten rule against prying into personal belongings, Andrew sat down and opened the first letter. It began simply: "My dearest Margaret, it has been 12 days since I last saw you, and still I can feel your fingers on my wrist, your voice in the wind." The letter was signed James. The words were filled with longing, with aching beauty, and with a sense of regret so deep that Andrew felt it settle in his own chest. He finished the letter and picked up another, and another. Hours passed. The sun had started to rise, painting soft gold across the ward windows. Andrew leaned back in his chair, the letters resting gently in his lap. Something about them stirred something unresolved in him. He thought of his own recent breakup, the silences, the what-ifs, the words he never said. These letters, from a man he'd never met to a woman who seemed to have vanished from the world, felt like a ghostly echo of his own pain. Who was Margaret? And what had happened to James? Chapter 2, The Woman in Room 12. Over the following days, the letters remained with Andrew. He kept them in his locker, returning to them between rounds. The mystery of them lingered like a scent on the edge of memory. He found himself thinking about Margaret, about the way James had described her laughter, her intellect, her stubbornness. She had felt real to him, more real than many of the people who passed in and out of the hospital. Eventually, curiosity overpowered hesitation. One afternoon, while reviewing patient files, Andrew decided to ask the nurses if the name Margaret meant anything to them. He was almost embarrassed. It felt like chasing a ghost. But when he brought it up in the break room, Nurse Clara paused. "Margaret Evans," she said slowly, as if tasting the name. "Room 12. She was here about 2 years ago. Retired schoolteacher. Sharp as a tack till the end. Sweet lady, always asked about someone named James." Andrew's heart quickened. He asked Clara if she remembered anything else. Only that she never married. Said her heart belonged to someone she hadn't seen in over 50 years. Said she still wrote him letters, though she never sent them. Digging deeper, Andrew located Margaret's archive file. Her emergency contact was listed as a niece, Emma Evans. With some hesitation, he reached out. A few days later, Emma responded. They met at a small cafe not far from the hospital. Emma was in her early 40s, composed, with a warm but cautious expression. When Andrew showed her the letters, her eyes filled with tears. She kept every letter he sent, Emma whispered, brushing her fingers over the worn paper. She told me about James Lawson. They were in love when they were young. But her family, they didn't approve. And then he went to war. She thought he died. Emma told Andrew that Margaret had spoken of James even in her final weeks, that she believed he was out there somewhere, maybe alive, maybe not. But she never stopped loving him. "If you ever find him," Emma said quietly, "I think she waited for him till her last breath." Chapter 3: A Life Left Unsaid. Andrew could no longer ignore the pull. Between patient charts and night rounds, he found himself falling deeper into the story of Margaret and James. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was a sense of purpose. A life had ended holding on to love, and another life, perhaps, was out there unaware. He began his search by checking public records, starting with old census data and military databases. It wasn't easy. James Lawson was a common name. But as days turned into weeks, a trail began to emerge. Draft records from the Vietnam War, enlistment documents, honorable discharge papers. Eventually, a match: James D. Lawson, born in 1943, last known address, a quiet coastal town in Maine. With his heart pounding, Andrew penned a letter. It was formal, respectful, and included copies of a few of the letters Margaret had kept. He didn't know if this was the right James, or if the man was even still alive. But he had to try. Weeks passed. Andrew almost gave up hope. Then one morning, tucked among the usual hospital mail, was an envelope. Handwritten. The name and return address read James D. Lawson, Camden, Maine. Andrew opened it with trembling fingers. "Dear Dr. Miller, I don't know what made you write to me, but I'm glad you did. I thought I'd buried that part of me long ago. I didn't know she kept the letters. I didn't know she still cared. I assumed she had moved on, forgotten. We were young, and the world, it got in the way." The final paragraph struck Andrew deeply. "I've never stopped thinking about her. Is it too late to see where she was laid to rest?" Chapter 4: Bench Under the Willow. It was a clear spring afternoon when Andrew met James in person. He arrived at the cemetery early, wanting a moment alone. Margaret's grave sat beneath a weeping willow tree, its branches trailing like silk ribbons in a breeze. A simple stone read, "Margaret Evans, 1942-2021. Forever waiting, forever loved." James arrived shortly after, walking slowly with the aid of a cane. He was in his late 70s now, but stood tall with a quiet strength. His eyes were clear and alert. In his hands, he carried a small wooden box. "Thank you," James said simply as he approached Andrew. They sat in silence for a few minutes. Then James opened the box. Inside were old, yellowed pages, his own letters to Margaret, ones he had written over the years but never sent. Some were angry. Others were full of longing. All of them drenched in the ache of time. He chose one and began to read aloud. His voice was steady at first, then it cracked. "I waited for you too, Maggie, but I thought you'd forgotten me. I didn't think I was worth remembering." Andrew stood still, listening to a man speak his heart at last to the woman he'd never stopped loving. It was raw, unfiltered, and deeply human. Later, James knelt beside the grave, placed the box of letters at its base, and whispered something only the willow and the wind could hear. Chapter 5: Letters Never Die. The hospital's hallway felt different now. At Andrew's suggestion, a small glass display case had been installed just outside the palliative wing. Inside were copies of Margaret's and James's letters, some originals too delicate to preserve, but others carefully mounted on archival paper. A brass plaque beneath the case read, "Asterisk letters from the ward, a love that waited too long, but never faded. Asterisk." Families stopped to read. Some wiped away tears. Others smiled gently. The letters became a quiet reminder of the human stories that lived, and sometimes lingered, within the hospital walls. One night, long after the halls had grown quiet, Andrew sat alone in the staff room. He picked up a pen and a piece of paper. After weeks of thinking, he began writing, not for a patient, not for a record, but for himself. The letter was to his ex. Not a plea, not an apology, just words he had never found the courage to say. Words he didn't want to leave unsaid. Because now he understood, some things may be lost in time, but love, when it's real, never truly disappears. Letters never die. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on our journey.